Content warning. This series will discuss topics that may bring up painful experiences for you. Please take the time to surround yourself with good medicines. If need be, pause the playback and go for a walk, stretch, have a glass of water, and come back to the show when you feel comfortable. Welcome to the Métis Speaker Series, presented by TELUS. I'm your host, Darian Kovacs. On this podcast series, we will be exploring learning, healing, and rebuilding within the Métis community. Our goal is to create awareness of and generate discussion about Métis issues, as well as how to heal from and move forward in a healthy way. We hope to reduce Métis invisibility in BC through the personal stories from our Métis community members. This show is brought to you by Métis Nation BC, TELUS, and Jelly Marketing. You gave me everything, a love I've never felt. Linda, why don't we just to warm it up, tell me about maybe this morning, what it was like for you at the ceremony there that Tom hosted.
It was really nice because we're from Saskatchewan, so hearing the Cree language always makes me feel so uplifted and trying to remember the words he used.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And for you, getting to be here today, what does it mean to you being able to be at this experience, this kind of gathering of people?
This is the first time that I've been to anything like this, so I'm not quite sure how it'll impact me or how it'll be, but it just feels like a safe place.
And yesterday, the second annual Truth and Reconciliation Day, what was that like for you to be a part of that and be with fellow Métis people?
It was nice. Yeah. It was a different kind of day for me. My daughter just moved. So I spent all the day before and yesterday morning helping. So I had to rush home, pack up, and get here. My sister got here from Saskatchewan and was waiting patiently. Thank you.
That's great. And maybe for you, what is the story that you want people to hear? What do you want to have recorded for generations to be able to access and for people today to hear?
Well, I think it's important for my daughters and my little granddaughter to hear my story.
And where would you like to start with your story?
I think I'll start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
We lived in a little community in Cree Lake, Saskatchewan, far from anything. The only way to get there was through float plane in the summer or ski planes in the winter.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there except our family and one other permanent family on the island we lived on. So we didn't have a school, we didn't have stores, we didn't have anything. So we had to go somewhere for school. My dad was white, my mom was Cree. And my sister was saying last night that we weren't physically dragged away by the police like some families were, but had we lived in a different community, maybe we would have. And we had to go to school somewhere. So my mom didn't send me till I was 7. And Margaret, my sister, was thankfully there because I would have died of loneliness, I think, without her. And I remember her prepping me for school. Trying to teach me how to say yellow because I couldn't say yellow. And I remember sitting on our kitchen table and she was combing my hair. Okay, say yellow. Lello. Over and over again. And I also couldn't say south because everybody there, when they left the community, say they're going south. I couldn't say south to save my soul because I was missing my front teeth. South. I'm going south. And I kept practicing to myself out behind our house all alone. I still couldn't say it. And I remember I don't remember the flight out of there. I don't remember the drive to the school. I just remember wondering when's school starting because I was waiting for school to start, but we were at the residential school. I think it was a weekend. So I just remember thinking, where's all the books? Where are all the pencils and paper? And I think that I must have had to go to the bathroom the whole time, but I was too scared to ask anybody where it was. So the next morning, I remember standing at the sink with Margaret, brushing my teeth. I think she was combing my hair, and I peed all over the floor. I remember her being really kind and saying, "It's okay, we'll just change you."
Mm.
So, and I was 7, so imagine, I don't know if you have little children, but 7-year-old away from your family.
I have a 7-year-old
Oh,
daughter and an 8-year-old daughter.
Oh, imagine if they
Yeah.
were gone from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my first memories of being there and being scared at night because I think they told us we couldn't get out of our beds at night. And at the very end of the hallway was a big red exit sign with a pot, like if you had to go to the bathroom in the night. But I think they said you're not allowed to get up. I think, if I remember correctly, so I was too scared to move. And that's what I remember the first few days.
And leading up to going, what was that like for your family and getting ready to go to school?
I don't remember that first year, but I remember the years after. My mom would always be frantic towards the end because she always ordered us new clothes from the catalog. And one year my dad was away when the plane came. It just came unexpectedly. We didn't know ahead of time it was coming. I remember her swearing and running around, being really angry because none of us were ready. The clothes hadn't came yet because they were probably coming on a different plane. And for years and years after, I would dream that same dream every night of the plane landing on the lake and me frantically trying to pack and not knowing what to take and thinking, do I need this for the winter? Do I need that? But when we got there, they took all of our clothing anyway and put it in the attic of the building and gave us the clothes that they wanted us to wear. So
the uniform.
And we didn't have a uniform. We just had, it was a Mennonite run school. So all the girls wear long, old-fashioned dresses all winter long too.
Could you describe your classmates and how many there were?
Okay, there were two schools, like 2 buildings. One was grade 1 to grade 4, and the other building was grade 1 to grade 3, then 4 to 7 in the other one. So there was a mixture of all kinds of ages in there. And when I was in grade 1, some of the kids from the village came to the school also. And there was this big, huge boy named Teddy Beatty, who was like a bully. And I think he was 16, but he was way behind in school. And so he was in our room too, and he was so mean. And one day the superintendent came to the school, and he didn't even come into the school to see us. He stayed in the cloakroom, that was called in those days. The teacher went out to speak to him. So I don't know why a superintendent wouldn't want to see the students, at least. So while he was out there, Teddy Beatty grabbed me by the hair, pulled me out of my desk, and dragged me down the aisle, and I was too scared to say anything. So when the teacher came back in, she wanted to know who had made all the noise and who wasn't quiet like she asked us to be. So nobody would say anything because they were too scared. So we all had to stand at the front of the class, and she gave us all the strap. So that was little me in grade 1.
Oh, man. And you lived there as well?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
The school was separate from the dorms that we lived in. So there's a boys' dorm, a girls' dorm. The girls' dorm had separate bedrooms, but there were 2 bunk beds in each one, 2 sets of bunk beds, so 4 per room. And we were divided into little girls, middle-sized girls, and big girls. Yeah. So when you got there, of course, you're the little girls. You had to go to bed the earliest. Then the middle-sized girls were next, and then the big girls. I think we had to go to bed at 6:30. Yeah.
How many years were you there?
Grade 1 to grade 7. But I was so smart, maybe because I started school later, that I got to skip grade 3.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was there from grade 1, 2, and then to grade 7. And by the time we got to I think in grade 6, we got a brand new school. So,
wow.
And we always had to walk. So it was a long, long distance through a path through the woods. And sometimes you got left alone after school to do cleaning the chalkboards or staying to do work that the teacher thought you needed practice on. And you'd have to walk home all by yourself through the woods where there were lots of bears and other wild animals. I never saw them, but we're lucky, I guess. Yeah.
And tell me about your experience. Were you there then, I guess, September to December, and would you go back home for Christmas or summers?
No, the first few years we never got to go home for Christmas.
But summers, though?
Yeah, it's summertime. Yeah.
But not Christmas.
We left home the end of August and got home at the end of June.
Okay.
And I think probably when I was like grade 5 or 6, we started going home at Christmas time. So I don't know how that was arranged. I think my dad worked for the Saskatchewan government. Okay. So I think he arranged the grocery plane that he got once a month to come around the time that we could come home for Christmas. Yeah.
And what was that? Your other students, were they all indigenous as well? Or were they mixed?
Mostly Métis.
Okay.
The ones from the village that came were First Nations kids. Okay. And they got to go home at the end of the day. Some of them, even though their house was maybe half a mile from the residential school, they still had to stay there to imagine how they felt not being able to go home at night to their moms.
What's something you want people to remember? Maybe some of the highlights from it, the things that you want to pass down.
There were some fun things.
Yeah.
I remember one of the girls was allowed to go trapping for furs. I'm not sure how she wrangled that, but she took me one day, and it was such a beautiful snowy winter day. And I remember walking, it felt like miles and miles from the school. And she caught a bunch of squirrels. And she said, "Can you carry these home?" So I said, "Sure." I was really happy to help. Then I started itching all over. And I thought, what the heck? They were full of fleas. Oh. That's why she got me to carry them, because she knew.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was a fun thing I remembered. Like, not fun getting bitten, but getting to go out and do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the year, they always had a big picnic before we went home. And I remember, I think it was the last year I was there, we had to do laundry all the time, like big, like the whole dorm of laundry. We all took turns. And I was helping. It was an old-fashioned washing machine with a wringer. And my hand got stuck in a rag, and it went right through the wringer. And the only thing I cared about was that I was going to miss the picnic the next day because I probably had a broken arm. So that's the most thing that I was upset about. And my friend who was helping, instead of hitting the emergency roller thing, rolled my arm back out again. So I got double rolling.
Oh, man.
But it wasn't broken.
Friendships. Tell me about friendships. You had your sister there?
Yeah, I had my sisters, lots of brothers there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How many sisters, how many brothers?
At the same time, I think there were 6 of us at one time. Yeah. I have a picture of all of us there. We were allowed to speak to each other. I know lots of residential schools didn't allow that, but we could mingle like during the free time. Yeah. And another memory I have of getting there, I don't know how, I would never have gotten away with this at home, so I don't know why I tried it there. But in the dining room, the girls sat on one side and the boys sat on the other. And I remember having canned plums for dessert and spitting the pit across the table with my brother. And he was terrified because he knew I'd get in big trouble. So he was going, "Don't do that." Like, he didn't say it, but his eyes were saying, "Stop it." Because my mom and dad would never have allowed me to act like that. So I don't know who I thought I was that day. The meals we had were every single day porridge for breakfast, except Sundays when they made a little special effort and we got cornflakes or puffed wheat.
Nice.
Yeah. And all the milk was powdered skim milk, so it was awful, like watery. I don't know why I don't remember the dinners or lunches, but we had to walk home, like walk to school and walk all the way back for lunch, all the way back to school.
Wow. To your dorms? To
the school, because the school was separate.
From the dormitory area? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you eat at the dormitory area then? Is that where they had the meals?
Yeah, they had a big dining room. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everybody had to help with setting up and for doing dishes after. So we got an extra long lunchtime so that everybody could make it back in time.
Maybe tell me about some of the teachers. Do you have any memories of any of the teachers, or any special ones that you want to?
Um, there was one who was really, really mean, the one that made me stay after school every day because I had trouble with math. So she used to make me stay after school, and then I'd have to walk home all by myself. And everybody hated her, so we made fun of her because she had really hairy legs, and we called these little fish at home in the summertime that we saw swimming. We'd call them Miss Paul's legs. So when she was mean, she was really mean. One day when I had to stay after school, it was in the new school that was built. The windows were really high and they opened inward. It was really windy. So the day I was leaving after school, the door slammed really hard from the wind, but she thought I did it. So she chased me down the hall with a big, it was called a yardstick back then, and beat me on the behind. And I cried, but it didn't hurt because I had a big fluffy skirt on. But I cried just so she'd stop and think that it was hurting me. So I remember her most of all. And what else do you need to know?
Maybe give me some memories. What would you do after school?
After school, we always walked home to the dining room because they always had a snack for us.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Fridays was always big cinnamon buns. So I was really charming to the cook. I'd stand and talk to her, eat my cinnamon bun, and then when her back was turned, I always used to snitch another one. Because I think we were always hungry.
Yeah.
I still love cinnamon buns. And when I mentioned porridge before, you'd think that I'd had enough porridge there, but I still love it to this day. I started to be a marathon runner in my late 40s, early 50s. And we'd always talk about food while we were running. And one day I said to my runner beside me, I'm going to make porridge when I get home. Porridge? She said, why would you want porridge? But you'd think I wouldn't, but I still love it. I know it was really lonely when you first got there, missing your family. In one year, but just before I left, my mom was painting the inside of our house. She's always painting something. And I accidentally touched the wall. And she yelled at me, what did you do that for? I told you to keep away from that wall. I didn't know till quite a few years later that she didn't paint over my little handprint. She said she just couldn't because I was leaving soon for school. So I remember that.
And you think of September 30th now. We had our second kind of honoring day yesterday. What does it mean to you? What do you want people to do on those days? And what does it mean to you personally?
I'm just glad that we have it and that more people are aware of it now. Because I didn't talk about it for a long, long time. I have two daughters who are grown adults now. When they were little, I told them I went to a boarding school. And when they got older, they said they pictured like a Paris, all girls, posh kind of school.
Yeah.
That's what they thought I went to. Yeah. So I don't know why I wasn't, like, why would I be ashamed of going there? Probably because I was ashamed of who I was as an Indigenous person. And I think before I came and when we filled out some paperwork prior to this, I was asked who made a difference in my life. And I was already like in my 30s. And I got a job at a family service organization. And there was a retired principal working there as a volunteer teaching ELL to new immigrants. And he started talking to me, and he knew I was Cree. I never told him, but he figured it out. And he kept hounding me to join the school district advisory committee. And I was still ashamed of being Indigenous. I never told anybody. And he went behind my back to my boss and said, Linda's joining the advisory committee. So that's when I got to that part. There were so many proud Indigenous people in that group. And that's not how it was in Saskatchewan. There was still lots of racism, I think still now. And people aren't proud of who they are. So I became more and more filled with pride. His name was Denny Ross. I think thanks to him, I started embracing who I am to this day. And I was also married to an RCMP officer. So in Saskatchewan, I grew up with that group of people who didn't speak very highly of Aboriginal people. So that's why I hid a lot of it too. Mm-hmm.
What's it like for you when you hear stories of other residential schools and people's experiences?
It's really sad. I went to a wellness conference too, right around the same time I started being on the advisory committee, and hearing some of the stories were so heartbreaking. Like I think we were one of the luckier ones, even though we got physically and sexually abused. But I remember hearing an elder woman telling us at the wellness conference how about her first days she didn't speak English at all. So when she she spoke her language, and they stuck needles in her tongue. And I thought, oh my God, I can't imagine anybody doing that to a child. I'm not trying to minimize what we went through either, but our treatment wasn't like that. Like that's horrible.
We do this thing at home around the dinner table with our kids, and they're 3, 7, 8, and 15, and we do a thing called Peach and Pit of the Day.
Oh,
Sometimes it's the rose and thorn of the day. You shared some of your peaches with cinnamon buns, and getting to go out on the trapping. Maybe share some more of the pits that you experienced that people should know about.
The bad parts. Yeah, there was a young family, a man and his wife and kids, who came there from the States. And back then, it was around the Vietnam War, and I think he only came to escape going to that. So he was a pervert, and I think he abused a lot of the girls there. Like I was telling my sister last night, one time he said to me and my friend, "I'll take you to the store," because it was a store down the road. And it was a little cab of a truck. So I sat in the middle, and all the way there, he was rubbing his elbow up and down my, didn't have much then, but my breast. So I knew how to get out of situations like that. So I made sure I didn't sit beside him on the way home. But I found out later, as a grown adult, that he abused a lot of people, especially my sisters, little sisters, and other women there. And I don't know why nobody did anything about it. Like, we didn't tell our mom till we were really old. And she felt really bad because we never said anything about our experiences at the school. We just went home and acted like we were happy, I guess.
When you think of the school, have you ever gone back physically and seen it?
No, they had a reunion one year. I didn't go. And now it's been burned to the ground. I don't know if someone did it spitefully or what happened to it. But someone told me that under where one of the furnaces had been, that they found some skeletal bones.
When you think now of kind of the Mennonites' role in that and what's happened in some of the reconciliation they're trying to do, how do you feel?
That's good. Yeah. If they do really mean it. Yeah. I don't have any religion in my life at all. I don't go to church. I just have my own spiritual ways of being.
What do you hope for your kids now? You got daughters and
I'm just grateful that they didn't have to experience that, especially my little granddaughter. Every time I look at her, I think how surrounded she is with love and people around her always, like she never has to be alone. Yeah. The other day she asked me, because they had a assembly at school about Orange Shirt Day, and she asks me every year, but she forgets, how long were you at residential school? And then she said, I was really sad today, Grandma, thinking about you. So I'm glad they're learning. I work in the school system now, so we don't do any of the planning for Orange Shirt Day. Our program says it's up to the the schools, like why should we do the work of reconciliation? Like let them do it. So it's really amazing what the schools come up with on their own and how they honor us. So I'm grateful for that.
And what are you hoping for today at this MNBC gathering here?
Just healing and being with other people who have gone through similar circumstances. I'm really excited. I know it's their first one, so I hope they do this every year. I thought it would be bigger. I thought there would be more people, but I guess people just aren't ready or able to come.
Did you make it to the BC Lions game last night?
No, I was so tired. I helped my daughter move the day before and yesterday, so I just need to rest. Plus, I was sick for the last 2 weeks, and we just lost a sister-in-law. So I was on bereavement leave last week.
Okay.
So I just needed some time to chill.
Yeah.
We watched it on TV last night.
Is it nice to see all the orange?
Yeah. And I don't know what, I said this to somebody before I came, when I was asked if I wanted to go. I don't know why, but I didn't want to feel singled out in a group of survivors. Like, I don't even know myself what that was about, why I felt like that. Because you know how they pan around the camera. I don't know, maybe I still have that shame a little bit left in me.
Yeah, or I don't think anyone likes being put on the spot for something that's so horrific and sad.
Yeah, and the school we went to is it was called Timber Bay in Saskatchewan. So Timber Bay and Isle of Cross were both left out of the settlement process. They said that we weren't funded federally, only provincially. So we're still fighting the court system to be recognized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because they felt like it wasn't under their jurisdiction.
Even though it was, like, they did offer some funding.
Okay.
So it's not fair still. I feel like it still isn't really settled for us. And someone said to me, a cousin who isn't indigenous, that's all about the money. And I said, it's not, that's not what it's about. Yeah. So that's still unsettled for me, part of it.
Be nice if there was closure.
Yeah.
And they could acknowledge.
Yeah, because I went through a lot filling out all the paperwork. It was really invasive and horrible, the things that they asked, and how they decided who got what money, like depending where you were touched. Like if you're touched on top of your clothing, you got less money than if someone touched you under your clothing. It was horrible. It's awful to be categorized like that. Imagine that.
So tell me about now today, wearing your Métis sash and so many amazing pins. Those that are listening to this and not watching, beautiful pins and a great sash. What does it mean to wear that today as a proud Métis person?
It makes me really proud. All the pins are just from different events I've been to, like canoe journeys, different ones I've collected along the way. And it feels good to be proud now because, like I said, I went through all those years of hiding who I was.
And your skirt you're wearing is a ribbon skirt?
Yes, I made this one.
Wow. It's a beautiful print.
I know, I like that. It looks like my beadwork because I do beadwork now as a way of healing. It's my medicine, I say. As I'm beading, I think of the person that's getting it and pray for them.
Tell me more about that.
My mom was a beater, so in our house we didn't have electricity unless my dad turned the power plant on. So I would sit with her, watching her do beadwork, and she'd say, "Don't mess up my beads," because she couldn't see very well with a lantern light. And back then there weren't that many colors to choose from, so black and dark blue could look really close. So she didn't let me mess up her beads. But I learned just from watching her, and she used to let me make little strings of necklaces. And I didn't take up beadwork until I was in my adult life.
Okay.
Like once I started recognizing and being proud of who I was. And then during COVID, me and my oldest daughter started doing beadwork because it was a way of healing and doing stuff together. And when my mom passed away, I asked if I could have what was left of her beads because nobody else was doing beadwork. And when I got home to Vancouver, my bag was missing at the airport. And there was one black bag still going around and around the carousel. So I figured that the other person must have taken mine. So I found the name tag, and there was luckily a phone number on there. And I called when I got home and I said, I think you took my bag, and I burst out crying. Yeah. My mom's beads were in there. And guess what? It was a bag of all beads mixed together. When she told me not to mess up her beads when I was little, they were all jumbled together in a big pile. So I made everybody who wanted one a pair of earrings with her mixed up beads, and I made myself some long dangly ones. Yeah, and now me and my daughter have a little business that we do our beadwork and sell it.
So what's the business name?
It's Lucia Rose Métis Cree Artisans, because Lucia was my mom's mom's name, and my mom's name is Rosa, but lots of people called her Rose, and I just thought it flowed better. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we chose that name, we were thinking of those two together.
It's great.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want people to remember, that you want to share for listeners?
Just always remember the people who didn't come home. There was a little boy who ran away from our school.
Yeah.
Bobby Bird, if you ever want to look him up.
And was that your school that you were?
Yeah. It was the year after I left. But my little sister saw him running out of the boys' dorm.
And you must have known him when you were there.
Oh, yeah, I knew him. He was the cutest little thing. He had freckles, I remember. And his the pervert was then moved to the boys' dorm after maybe they figured out he shouldn't be with girls. She saw him chasing him into the bush, and they never found him. And his parents, or he lived with his grandparents, they didn't even know he was missing until Christmas, I think, when they came to get him for Christmas, and he was gone. And they never found anything of him until, I think it was 20 years later, a hunter found a little skull, and then it took a lot of years to find out that was him. And apparently some elders went there to the spot to do a little ceremony, and they said he died a horrible death. So we think that the pervert probably chased him and killed him. And it was all because he told my sister, because he pulled his elastic out of his underwear. It was loose, so he pulled it all out. And he got in trouble just for that. So I always think of him, little cute little face, how he must have been so scared running. And kids at school now always ask me, why did you run away? I said it was too far. Like, it was like a 2-hour drive to the next town that we could fly home from, and then a 2-hour plane ride. So if I ran away, I wouldn't have made it either anywhere. Yeah. So luckily I was only there till grade 7, because then I had to go somewhere for high school, and I got to go live with my older sister after that.
Where was high school for you?
In Big River, Saskatchewan. But I remember the year I didn't have to go there, being on the bus with my little tiny siblings and dropping them off. And they looked so scared. It was getting kind of dark by the time we got there. I remember their little faces looking so sad. And I had to leave them behind.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story with us
you.
Today. Very courageous of you.
Thank you.
This has been the Métis Speaker Series podcast, presented by TELUS, and I'm Darian Kovacs. Thanks to Métis Nation BC and TELUS for making this possible, with funding provided by the Civil Forfeiture Office's Indigenous Healing Stream. You can listen to all of our episodes, learn more about the podcast, and sign up to the Métis Nation of BC newsletter to stay up to date on Métis news at métispodcastseries.ca. You can find out more about the music we're playing by Love Life by visiting SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/lovelifeofficial, LUVLYF official, and link in the show notes for your convenience. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast listening device. See you again soon. Mina Kawapa Mitten. Thank you. Marci for listening.